Welcome back to the Blackletter Podcast. We set out to create an entertaining and exciting podcast about law and business. Blackletter, the name, comes from the Gothic typeset. Over time, Blackletter became the only font that English law books were printed in. It made it harder for kind of the common person to understand what the English law books said. Blackletter came to represent something that was law, that was set in stone, that was sort of old and a well-settled fundamental principle of law. We're here to demystify black-letter law. We're here to demystify things that happen in business and law and where those two meet. And I hope you have fun listening.
What are the three big learning points you've had throughout your career that you'd like to share with budding entrepreneurs, budding lawyers, non-budding lawyers, people who are retiring, whatever it is, share away?
You have to have a plan, right? Know where you want to be, and how you get there might be completely different from the plan, but you got to have a plan. You got to be persistent. And then probably the biggest thing is you got to be patient. So many young professionals and young lawyers come to me and, they want right now to be the VP or the boss. Same thing at a law firm, building a book of business and aviation law took me 3 to 5 years. The purposeful part of it was I would go to conferences and figure out who I was going to meet there. And then I would go again the next year and go again the following year and build those relationships, right?
Yep. Long tail. So
yeah.
I don't know, is that 3 pieces or 1? So you've got to have a plan, you've got to be persistent, and you've got to be patient. So would you say it's the 3 Ps? Plan, persistence, patience, or P cubed?
Yeah, you can add a footnote and say purposeful, but no, you're exactly right. I mean, here's the great one on the persistence, right? I remember when I was practicing in Charleston, I was trying to get some business from American Airlines. My real good friend was there. He was a former Navy JAG guy. He came back to me and said, "Mark, you're not admitted in DC, and the general counsel wants somebody admitted in DC." I said, "You got to be kidding me," because I said, "Okay, I got it." But you know what I did? I got admitted in DC. I put it on the website. I traveled back and forth to DC. And 2 years later, he called me up and said, "Hey, I think we've got some work for you." So, that's the persistence and patience. Don't let the door shut on you. Figure out how to open them.
That's fantastic. Great. Well, gosh, Mark, if I don't know if you have anything else, but that's what I was looking for. Your 3, pieces of advice. So plan, persistence, and patience. And I guess you'd say purposeful planning, purposeful persistence, and purposeful patience. If you just want to make it fully alliterative, you can have that. Maybe you could put that on your blog and say everything's purposeful, and it's the 3 Ps.
Advice that I normally give to particularly the young people who ask me for career advice. One is with a plan. You would think that would just be an obvious thing, but for a lot of us, it isn't, because you feel like you are in a lot of control over your career because, it depends on what your boss wants you to do. It depends on, where you're located. There are a lot of factors, but there are some things you do control. Having your mind's eye where you want to be 20 to 25 years from now, if it's general counsel, CEO, chief marketing officer, chief librarian, whatever it is. And then from there, what are the component pieces that you need in order to be competitive in your career 20 to 25 years from now when you're eligible to be considered for that role, because you will have been in this industry or in this practice for a long time. People are going to be looking to you for sage wisdom. Maybe some of us are already at that stage. So you have all of these different component pieces. Okay, now I need to build steps to get to where I want to be 20 to 25 years from now, just to be competitive. So I tell them, think about your career in 5-year increments, and then figure out whether you need all 5 years to do something. Maybe you need 5 years of labor and employment experience, one way or the other. You have to figure out whether you're ready for the next part of, or whatever that next step is. And then don't be afraid to take it. Don't be afraid to pursue it. And don't be afraid to leave your current employer if that's what it takes in order for you to get it. The second piece of advice I got, I was reading Ken Chenault, who is the former CEO of American Express, gave an interview that I read early on in my career that still resonates with me today. He was asked how he got to be CEO, the first African-American CEO of American Express. And one of the responses he gave, at least the one that sort of registered with me the most, was he said, "I took the jobs that nobody else wanted, right? And I made them successful." And so, of course, somebody said, "Well, why would you do the jobs that nobody wanted?" And he said, "Well, if I totally screwed up, nobody was expecting anything from me anyway because it was going nowhere and everybody knew it. If I changed it, which more often than not I was able to do and make it really successful, then I was going to get on everybody's radar, right?" And so that was part of, the way I sort of approach my career is I'm going to do the jobs that maybe not a lot of people would want to do, or that would be more challenging because of the environment or what have you. And hopefully, as I think my career has borne out, I was fortunate enough to be relatively successful in each of those endeavors. And the more I became more successful in those endeavors, the more it started to weave a strand and a narrative of who I was and how successful I was at doing the practice of law, and got other people's attention, or it was easier to get other people's attentions, including all the way to the White House. So, third piece of advice is have fun. We spend a lot of time doing what we do in order to become the experts that we hope that people will see us as. And there's a level of seriousness of purpose that comes with doing that and creating that legacy. But if you're not having fun doing it, you're dreading getting up every morning to have to go into a job that you absolutely hate, well, then that's also a part of your legacy. You have a lot more control over that than I think sometimes people realize. And so, it may be simple, but sometimes we sometimes overlook the simple. Have fun at what you do, and if you're not having fun, it's time to change.
Great. So if I could summarize the Mark Nichols key to life success, have a plan and faith in yourself to do it. Take the jobs that nobody wants and make sure that you have fun when you do your job. What I've pulled away is that, and I think it's important that most of us, when we bid on government contracts, think about, who am I teaming with? How much money can I make? What's my work share? What's my return going to be? And how are we pricing? Because they think about pricing and they think about how best to put themselves and win the RFP. But honestly, I think the compliance aspect of this, like, am I ready if I win this contract? Am I immediately subject to losing the contract? So am I compliant? Have I read all the check boxes? Is my book boss a compliance person? Um, all of those things are things that people don't think about. And I appreciate that. And I've taken that away from this conversation. Is there anything else you want to add that we've missed or forgotten?
I think that companies are often afraid to reach out for help. And there's a lot of help available out there. The Small Business Administration can help small businesses. They have counselors and many organizations set aside to help with that. There's lots of consultants or accountants that can help with your cost accounting if that's the issue. And there's also firms like ours, Tom, who work a lot with small businesses and have affordable rates for small businesses that can come in, do a review, and help plan a project plan for clients so that they don't have to think about it. They don't have to figure it out. They can simply outsource it. Compliance as a service is huge.
What advice do you have for people out there that you think are kind of like, these are the things that, I would, and I don't know if the MBA helped you massively, or if, your advice is go back to school and get an MBA or whatever it is. Do you have any thoughts for the listening audience?
Yes.
Words of wisdom. Good. She said yes with like a deep throaty,
yes.
like, OMG, yes.
I think there's two things. One thing we've done that I think has served us well and was not on purpose, but was we've built the business to be as flexible as possible. So our fixed costs have always stayed low, and we tend to only put in as much process as we absolutely have to keep going. Now, that's been a challenge post-acquisition because we didn't onesie-twosie add people. We added a lot of things all at once.
Right.
So that's been
Right.
a little bit tricky. But generally speaking, being able to stay flexible lets us meet customers where they are, because sometimes things come in the door and people say, can you do this? And we weren't thinking we'd ever do that.
Right.
But it sounded like a great idea, so we can respond. And keeping the projects stable in and of themselves, like keeping the projects organized, and then using resources that come out of those, like the profits that come out of the contract, to do stuff that will further the company longer term. So keeping
Gotcha.
that flexibility has been really important. I
So
think,
flexibility
in the business structure.
And then you're also saying, so in the structure,
Mhm.
and then you're also saying you're reinvesting
In the
earnings
business,
as
yeah.
opposed to pulling earnings out all the time. Your plan is to grow this.
Oh, yes, we've done that the whole time. We've been
Okay.
bootstrapped since the beginning. So we don't have any outside investors.
No
or
debt,
money,
no outside
debt.
investors.
No.
So that's first piece of advice. Anything else that you think you would share?
I
Flexibility being number one.
think being cognizant of your risk tolerance level
Okay.
and planning accordingly. So I am a risk averse person. Dan is much more risk tolerant than I am. The balance there has been good, I think, because it has kept us from going too far in either direction. But we've had backup plans upon backup plans. We have money in the bank. We've always saved that in the beginning. We used to keep 6 months' salary for everybody in the bank in case the customers went away.
Do you still do that?
No, we don't do that.
Okay. Good grief.
Now what we do is we're diversified across contracts. And
I guess when it was the two of you, that was a little easier.
Yes. Yeah. For a while we kept doing that. So when we hired somebody, it was like, okay, I guess we just got to wait till the savings account floats back up.
Whoa.
But that was that's what let me sleep at night. And if you have in the back of your mind, if you're really, really worried about something, you can't look forward and do what's best for the business. So I think being honest with yourself about where your risks are and how you feel comfortable about them is really important, because there's a lot of things that people, I don't know, this is a silly example, but when we went into our office, we had to buy a bunch of furniture. Furniture's really expensive. The advice was to lease the furniture. And then you get to write off the interest and you don't pay for all the cap. But then I have a debt and we didn't want debt. So we just bought it. And at the time, the furniture dealer was like, what are you doing? And I was like, making it so I can sleep at night. But now I don't have to worry about paying that down. So
Right.
it's a different mindset, but sort of respecting that in yourself, I think, is really important, because otherwise you're going to make yourself crazy.
Okay. So flexibility,
Risk
understanding your own risk tolerance, and how to manage your own risk tolerance.
Yeah.
I guess,
sure.
is that part of it? And do you have a third overarching point?
This is going to sound ridiculous, but people always quit on Fridays.
Okay.
They do.
Makes sense.
It's not a thing you think about. I have a whole thing about we don't do bad news at the end of the week, because I don't want to send people bad news and then they sit at the weekend and they feel miserable. Bad news always comes out early in the week.
Fair. Okay.
But the opposite of that happens to you as a leader, because people hit you with bad news at the end of the week frequently. That has been my experience. So I think the bigger takeaway is understand that you can control things coming out of you as much as possible to help manage your team, but you end up not being on the receiving
You
end
have
of
to
the sad
absorb the
situation.
bad?
Yes.
Is that the third point? You have to, as a leader, you have to absorb the bad
and try and
not
buffer your
blink
team from
and
it.
buffer your team.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Which
love
is
that.
Tough.
I mean, so if I were to summarize the three things that have made you successful, or do you have a fourth, or is
No, I
those
think I'm good now.
the three? Okay, you think
That's
you're good?
Let's stick with 3.
I think so. Flexible business structure.
Yep.
Understanding your own risk tolerance and how to manage that risk tolerance in a sensible way, which can mean a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then the third thing is people quit on Fridays. I think that's the easiest way to remember it.
Yep.
But the people quit on Fridays saying, I guess, is that you have to, as a leader, absorb bad news on a bad day to absorb bad news and buffer your team from it.
Yep.
So I like that, though. People quit on Fridays.
Yep.
And it's true. Because if you were quitting, wouldn't you quit on a Friday? I would, because that's, I'm going to go out and have a drink. I'm like, I just quit today. I told my boss, Tracy, to shove it, take her satellite data and send it to NASA. And I'm going to another company and going to look at the same data, but for somebody else.
Whenever you've got your team together, always ask for their input. You'd be surprised how some of these folks have some really, really good ideas. Or they may see something based on their experience or what they're experiencing, even with the corporation at the time, or me and this nonprofit with Veterans Moving Forward, that I either didn't think about or I didn't see it in that particular light, especially when you're working with volunteers. So getting their input is very critical to the success of the organization. However, once everything is done, there's still only one commander. There's still only one president. And so whenever you make the decision, do so, believe in what you're doing. But as we also learned in the military, we had operations orders, and it started out, looking good on paper until we actually started to execute. And then we started doing the alternate orders, or what we used to call the frag orders, because things
Fragos.
change. Fragos, everything changes. Well, as soon as you do that, so you got this beautifully printed strategic plan, you've got the direction, you figure out how much budget you're going to need. 2 months into that strategic plan, yeah, Murphy comes to town. So what you do is you have to be able to adjust. You can't just keep going at it saying, well, this is what the plan says, so this is how we're going to have to do that. Well, nope, it's a living document and it needs to be revised and updated as you move along. As you also get your team members to come along with you. I like to think of it as the Pied Piper, where I get all the team together. And then this was really important, not only for the current job, but especially in my prior opportunity with Employers for the Guard and Reserve, with the 5,000 volunteers that I had across the country, to make sure they understand the direction, how important it was that they were part of that solution, that they were integral to how we organized, and that each one of them played a critical part in the overall success of it. One of my favorite things that I did, and I've done it here with with Veterans Moving Forward, is I had a slide that had just Lego pieces. And I told everybody that you are, in essence, like a Lego piece. Everybody's a different shape, size, functionality, experience. Where do I go? Where do I fit? How does this do? I said, but at the end of the day, these Lego pieces are going to form the letters of, back then, ESGR, and today, Veterans Moving Forward, VMF. And so I had an artist guy to draw these letters with all these different Lego pieces and colors, but kind of looked like the letters. And I said, if you notice, they all fit. And if you notice, they all work together. And if you notice, they all accomplish the mission of a successful organization. And it's because each one of you are part of that critical asset that we need to make sure that we can accomplish our mission. And for us, that's training and placing these service dogs with these deserving veterans who are dealing with mental or physical challenges.
So if I could summarize then, what I've got, Gordon, is first thing is get buy-in and input from everybody, then make the plan, and then no plan survives contact with the enemy, be ready to adjust, but you've got to execute the plan once you have the plan. Those are kind of the pieces of wisdom that you've shared. Did I summarize that pretty fairly?
Yep, and I would just add one other piece, because every plan has a resource requirement. And one of the things that I learned when I was in the Pentagon when I was responsible for Army training, is that there was a tendency for the government to say, well, we only have so much money in the budget, so therefore we can only train X amount, which is a true statement. But what the tenor of the conversation took on was, well, whatever amount of money we could train, that was the requirements that we need to function for the Army, which is absolutely incorrect in my view. So, for example, I need to train 100 Apache pilots in a year. Well, I've only got funding for 50 Apache pilots. So instead of saying, well, I'm fully funded because I can fund 50 Apache pilots, I would say, no, we're 50% funded because I still need 50 more pilots to meet the requirements that we have worldwide. So that's why I tell people, don't let resources drive the operations train. Make sure the operators drive the resource train. Don't change the requirements based on how many dollars that you may or may not have. Identify it. If you're short, then you've got an unfunded requirement that you've got to make up for it. That's where we are with Veterans Moving Forward. Again, you mentioned earlier, $30,000 a month operation. So if I don't get $30,000 this month, that doesn't mean that we're only training half a dog.
Right.
What it means is next month, whatever that delta is, I've got to raise the 30,000 plus that
Plus
month
the delta.
to stay on track and still be able to accomplish our mission.
Tell us your lessons learned, because that's what I'm most excited about and most interested in through all of these trials and travails you've had, and they're hard lessons. So
hard lessons. One, just get it out there. You've got a product and you've got an idea. Don't talk about it, do it.
Okay.
Just don't talk about it. Just get it done.
So execution.
And you know what?
Pull the trigger, as we used to say.
That tech company with which I was involved, a dear friend of mine, he wanted things to be perfect.
Right.
You know what? We don't have time to be perfect. Get it out there and you improve it.
Yep.
Get it out there and you improve it. So that's lesson number one.
Okay.
I think lesson number two that I've really seen recently, and that is goodwill
Okay. Then
versus
explain.
merit.
Okay.
If you'd asked me 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I would have said, you know what? Hard work, a great product, that's going to prevail. No, that's not true. You need people around you who want to see you win, who want to see you succeed.
So you're talking about inside of your company, your
And
partners,
outside,
your
and
business,
outside.
and outside your companies. So promoters and partners.
Nothing happens on its own.
Okay.
And again, hard work and merit, you just disappear into your little office and that's it. Take example, being on this show today.
Right.
You and I have goodwill with each other.
Okay.
If I was in my office all the time, just working really hard, developing a great product, I wouldn't be on the show. You and I met each other. We like each other. Now the Ukrainian Special Forces, as of this week, have soldier fuel arriving there.
Getting ready to beat those Russians back.
Yeah, it's a 500 special operators. We were on the phone with them with a translator last week.
Fantastic.
And the reason that happened is because I met two guys who were political refugees from the Soviet Union.
Mhm.
We liked each other. We got along really well. So they made a couple of phone calls, and now the Ukraine Special Forces have soldier fuel.
So this advice is you've got to get out there to make things happen.
You've got to get out there to make things happen.
Okay.
And, you know, if there's something that maybe you're tired and you don't really feel like going to a special event,
Mhm.
so what? Go anyway.
Have a
soldier fuel.
and you'll feel like going.
But definitely, you have to have people who want to see you win.
Okay.
And I think that goes back to, just be nice to people.
Okay.
Just be nice to people. Don't grow too quickly.
Okay.
I know that's a mistake I made a long time ago. You grow too quickly. No, don't grow too quickly. Manage your resources, manage your people.
So how do you tell if you're growing too quickly? What does that look like? Because that's a tough one. I mean, I get that you've got to execute, can't have a perfect product. You got to get it out there and repair. Got a goodwill. I get that. But not growing too quickly, I understand what that means. But what does that really mean anecdotally? How do you explain don't grow too quickly?
I'll give you a variant of that.
Perfect.
So for instance, we've had the opportunity before of going into maybe over 1,000 stores right away.
Right.
Versus focusing on, for instance, you love Green Top.
Mm-hmm.
I love Green Top outside of Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
We go there to a focus group that loves our product right away. All of a sudden, in 2 days, we can sell $3,000 worth of soldier fuel at a special event.
Right.
Now, imagine a handful of locations like that who are ravenous for our product, for soldier fuel and go pills. Let's develop that incredible.
So you want to develop a grassroots fan base before you go national so you don't have negative feedback in advance. You would basically want to develop
so that it's something that you can show tremendous success in a focused effort, as opposed to rolling out to 1,000 or 2,000 stores that you're not ready to support yet.
Okay.
And that might not be your exact user base. So focus on success. Go ahead into those places, a small number of them, and kill it. And then you can grow from there.
So if we were to summarize, so your 4 points.
My first point was get it out there.
Get it out there. Execution. Don't wait. Put it out there. And if you have to fix it after it's out there, that's fine.
You can have version 2.0, version 3.0.
And second point. So get it out there.
So no perfectionism.
No perfectionism.
Second point is what I say, goodwill versus merit.
So goodwill versus just the simple hard work.
Yeah. You have to have the merit. You have to have the hard work, but you have to have people who want to see you succeed.
And that's kind of, getting yourself out there. It's another, it sounds like it's another piece of get it out there. So get it out there, goodwill, point 3.
Don't grow too quickly. And for me, focus on a smaller area and succeed wildly at that smaller area.
So proof of concept, really.
Yeah, you could say that.
I mean, we do that in the biotech industry, or we did that in the biotech when I was doing biotech. But proof of concept, you've got to prove that you've got the legs, that you've got your product is good with the right group first before you that would be growing too quickly. It's just to say, let's blast it out there because we have an opportunity to do it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Awesome.
And for us with Soldier Fuel, we don't want to go up against Coke or Pepsi right now.
Right.
And that's what would happen
Yeah,
if we blasted into 2,000 or 3,000 stores.
They've got some marketing channels.
They do. So
Yeah.
we're focusing on the areas that love us and that we can wildly succeed, and we'll grow from there.
Fantastic.
So the first thing that I like to help people think about is in their own connections, you really have 4 quadrants. You've got current strong ties, you've got current weak ties. You've got dormant strong ties and dormant weak ties. So this 4 quadrant approach, it's like
Yep.
before you turn on your computer or any of those kinds of things, begin to think about who are these people within these quadrants. Like, who are the initial people that you want to get back in touch with? So my first piece of advice is define who your ties are, right? And list them out, like build the list, but using that
Okay.
4 quadrants, because it's
Build
amazing.
the list.
Right, build the list. Build the
Okay.
list. Because it's amazing to me when I come to attorneys and I work with them and I'm like, all right, who do you know? And they're like, I don't know anybody. And I'll say to them, you're lying to me. I know you're lying to me, right?
Well, I've met some lawyers who might not know anybody. I'm just saying. Might not know very many people. Anyway, sorry.
Right.
Go ahead. I digress.
So I think the first thing is building the list. I think the second thing is, getting your mindset in the right place, right?
Okay.
So you're not asking the person to be written into their will. You're not asking to move in with them. You're not asking these, enormous types of things. So the second piece is around how you think about your network and this magic word called networking, right? And, the way I try to help attorneys, think through that is how do you move from this like transactional notion of networking where I need to extract some value from you. So gimme. When in reality, authentic relationship building, your authentic social network is about how can you on a daily basis think about one who's done some good in your world, right?
Okay.
So for me, the mindset reframe is the second piece on how can we think about people that have done good in your world and sharing it with them. All right, so maybe the mindset reframe, maybe we should just call it start your thanking party.
Start your thanking party. Build your list, start your thanking party. See, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for Zoom taglines.
Yes.
Okay. Politician taglines. Okay.
Start your thanking.
So tell me about that.
So I often talk about appreciation as currency, and often we don't use that currency enough.
Gotcha.
So when you have a daily intention and you think about all the good things that are in your world, who have helped you get to where you are? Who was that first teacher? Who was that first client? Who was that former mentor? And so one of the things that I often think about after I'm able to get my kids to school is who can I thank today, right? And
Wow.
then you use your Excel file and your CRM and your social tools to look at that and say, who's worthy of thanks? Who of all the things that I know how to do, I just won this client. I just figured this thing out. Well, who taught you how to do that? So having a daily appreciation intention is really important. We often talk about gratitude practices, but we don't integrate gratitude practices with our network, right?
Wow. Right.
So start your thanking party.
Okay. Got it. Build your list, start your thanking party. And do we have a number 3 on your list of pieces of advice? I love those 2 things.
So
I'm internalizing them.
awesome. So I think the third piece is, and then, this is a chapter in my book, is really breaking through your own Bermuda keep in touch triangle. So
I saw that. Yes. So I'm confused though. The Bermuda Triangle, is that a bad thing or a good thing? I'm a little confused about the metaphor, right? Because I know it's a thing. It's not a real thing. I've read about this. It's a kind of a myth, but
it is a myth.
But,
it is.
So
exactly.
Oh, so that's the metaphor.
You have nailed it. The Bermuda Triangle is a myth. It does not even exist. So like in these legends, that the planes and ships would, expel forever. It doesn't exist.
Okay. So I love that. So tell us about the Bermuda Triangle.
So what is your keep in touch Bermuda Triangle? It's this notion of all these things that are in your head that hold you back from actually getting back in touch with somebody.
Okay.
So you've got your CRM or your Excel file, you've got your list, you've got all these things, but your heart is not in it because of what's going on in
So
your
it's,
head.
I know what you're like, I haven't talked to them since college. It would be weird. That's
Right.
probably the number one thing for
Right.
me. I'm like, God, they were great friends, and I'll connect with them on social media or like a post. But if I'm like, hey, I'd like to catch up, they'll be like, why the F do you want to catch up with me after 25 years randomly? Like, what's your motivation? It seems weird. I might ask that. I wouldn't. I would be happy to talk to them. And I can't, but it's hard to reframe in your mind. You're like, wow, if that friend of mine reached out, I'd love to talk to them. But you're thinking that they're going to have a reaction they might not have, right? Is that kind of the Bermuda? I'm sure
So
there are
these-
others.
Yeah. So what you're describing are the three foundational emotions: guilt, fear, and worry. So what you're describing are fear and worry, right? You're
Yeah.
describing fear and
What's
worry.
the
And
guilt one?
the guilt one. Oh, the guilt one, and it's the most common one. The guilt is, oh my God, I was responsible for not maintaining this relationship. When in reality, the relationship just fizzled, right?
I never even thought of that. Interesting.
Yes.
I guess I'm not good at the guilt thing. I don't, but I see
That's
that.
okay.
I understand that people have that. Okay.
Yeah.
So those are the three things.
That's all for today's episode of Blackletter. Thanks again for listening. Join us next time when we talk about more Blackletter issues in creative ways. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode, and check out our website at blackletterstudios.com.